Has there ever been a downfall as jarring as the one we're witnessing with the Chennai Super Kings? I'll answer that for you. Never. For 15 years, CSK wasn't just a cricket team, but it was an anomaly. A machine designed to defy the logic of T20 cricket. While every other franchise obsessed over youth, data and the future, Chennai doubled down on the past. They won with players the rest of the league had written off. They won with Dad's army. They won with a philosophy that experience beats everything.
And tonight, we hold a fifth Tata IPL trophy along not so young, very experienced ones. They've had to do it the hard way.
But that machine has now stopped. The yellow flags are still flying, but the fear factor is gone. The fortress at Chippak, once the most intimidating ground in world cricket, has become a place where visiting teams now expect to win. And the most concerning bit is, they don't seem to know why. This is the story of a franchise that built an empire on wisdom and veteran experience, only to find themselves stranded when the clock finally ran out. A team that once had the clearest identity in the IPL is now wandering through a season aimlessly. CSK haven't just lost games, but they've lost their mojo. Before all the tactical confusion though, before the disastrous squad selections, before the opening night blowouts against the Rajasthan Royals that left fans stunned in silence, there was a blueprint. The CSK philosophy was simple. Cricket is played between the ears. They didn't care about a player's age on his passport, they only cared about the ice in his veins. When the rest of the IPL was scouting young talent, CSK was signing experienced veterans that other franchises looked past, like Imran Tahir, Faf du Plessis or Shane Watson. They were backing Ambati Rayudu, Suresh Raina and Wayne Bravo. They were building a sanctuary for the old guard with a space for a couple of youngsters to develop, like Ruturaj Gaikwad or Deepak Chahar. And for a long time, it was the greatest strategy in the history of the league. Think about the names that define this era. Faf du Plessis, the rock at the top.
Another half century, and the dressing room will stand and applaud once more.
Imran Tahir, the ageless leg spinner who ran marathons after every wicket. Wayne Bravo, the master of the death overs.
And another one, a deep mid-wicket for Bravo.
Shane Watson, who could barely walk in a final, but still hits a century on one leg to win a trophy.
And that is magnificent. Every 100 is special, but I don't think you'll see anything.
And of course, the pillars. MS Dhoni, Ravindra Jadeja, Ravichandran Ashwin and Ambati Rayudu.
By the barest of margins.
Kohli goes down the ground. Kohli goes out of the ground.
Dhoni finishes off in style.
I do not believe what I've just seen.
But the problem with a philosophy built on experience is that it eventually has an expiration date, and that date dawned 2 years ago. It wasn't too long ago that the Yellow Army's at the top of the mountain. The 2023 title victory felt like the ultimate validation. It was the one last job for a group of veterans who'd been told they were too old, too slow, and too predictable.
Those young, those not so young, very experienced ones. They've had to do it the hard way.
But when Ravindra Jadeja struck those final 10 runs off the last 2 balls against Gujarat, it felt like time had stopped. The yellow ticker tape fell and the narrative was sealed. CSK looked invincible and they trusted their people.
The IPL champions 2023 are CSK for the 5th time.
Unfortunately, that victory masked a growing issue. Success can be a blinding light when it makes you ignore the cracks in the foundation, and one by one, their legends had started to leave. Retirement had took some, the auction took others, and the leadership transition became a saga rather than a smooth handover. Suddenly, the experienced group was just gone. Faf was leading another team, Bravo was in the dugout instead of on the pitch, Watson and Rayudu were memories, and even the relationship with Jadeja, the crown prince of Chennai, felt fractured and uncertain. But as always with CSK, the philosophy is bigger than the individual, so even when the names changed, their strategy did not. And this is where the downfall truly began. The most painful stage for any great dynasty is the moment they realize when their game plan that had made them great for so many seasons, for whatever reason, no longer worked. CSK entered the past few off-seasons still looking for CSK-type players, but the market had moved on. Their squad selection, once the gold standard of the league, now looked scattered and confused. After trying and failing to replicate the experience model over the last couple of seasons with players like Conway, Rahane Tripathi, Huda and Jadeja amongst others, and having failed with that strategy, they've completely done a 180. Now they're building around the likes of young players, Samson, Gaikwad, Matre, Brevis and Kartik Sharma. The result though, a batting lineup that looks like a collection of strangers wearing the same shirt, where only one player has played more than 10 games for CSK. And again, it looked bad a few nights ago at the Guwahati. The bowling has also completely lost its bite. A team which once had a world-class spinner arsenal and a captain who used them better than anyone else now lacks any venom outside of Noor Ahmed. It's a CSK side that's lacking any real identity aside from 3 excellent batsmen, but that is no winning formula and no centerpiece to build around. If anyone needed proof that the empire was all but gone, they got it in the opening game of this season. Against the Rajasthan Royals, it wasn't just a loss, it was a demolition. From the very first over, Chennai looked a step behind. Once their 2 big names were dismissed, their batting crumbled, and then their bowling also got taken down as the double R's won with 47 balls to spare. There was no fight back, no tactical squeeze, and there was only a slow, painful realization for fans that the gap between the past and present only continues to widen. Their aura is gone, their identity is blurred, and for the first time in nearly 2 decades, the Chennai Super Kings look like they don't belong at the top. You cannot talk about the downfall of CSK without talking about the specific man who held the roof up. When you lose Faf du Plessis, you don't just lose an opener, you lose the person who sets the tone for the entire innings. Faf understood the chip-up pitch, he knew when to attack and when to rotate. His departure to RCB was the first major fracture in the facade. Then consider the likes of Ambati Rayudu, Suresh Raina and MS Dhoni either retiring or losing their best touch. But perhaps the most devastating losses were in the bowling department. Dwayne Bravo was the death over king, and CSK could always turn to him to close out the match or win a game for them in a tight chase. Without him, and without the prime years of their other key weapons like Ravichandran Ashwin and Imran Tahir, the CSK spin choke had become a CSK leak. For so many years, Imran Tahir was the best spinner in white ball cricket and CSK held him as their ace. His amazing variation and relentless accuracy helped break middle over partnerships and break games open for CSK.
And another wicket falls, and Imran Tahir goes for another lap of honour.
Then you had the tactical genius of Ravichandran Ashwin, who was always one step ahead of the batters and always able to keep the run rate down.
Looking for the reverse swing, brilliantly taken by Ashwin. The bails have come off in a flash.
If that wasn't enough, you also had Ravi Jadeja, the ace all-rounder who was always economical and also an excellent player with the bat.
Another one! Jadeja, oh my god, what a game he's having! It seems like Jadeja versus RCB right now.
The only downside though to CSK having a team packed full of so many quality and experienced players is that you don't get a chance to blood younger ones. So the problem is once they all move on, you only have so many players that you've developed to take over, like Gaikwad for Watson, Dubey for Raina, or Ngidi for Bravo. But once their golden generation began exiting en masse, they were left with too many holes to plug at once. And while their identity and a few key players helped them make one last run in 2023, it was a machine running on its final fumes before sputtering out.
For those young, those not so young, very experienced ones, they've had to do it the hard way.
Another key area they lost it is the auction. For years, the CSK auction strategy was the envy of the league. They didn't panic, they didn't overspend on hype, and they just waited for their targets and brought them home. But in the last few major auctions, something changed. The strategy felt less like loyalty and more like denial. They spent too much money on players who clearly were overhyped in T20s and unproven, like Daryl Mitchell, Ben Stokes, Prashant Veer or Kartik Sharma.
Will sell Kartik Sharma to the Chennai Super Kings at 14 crore and 20 lakh. Sold. Congratulations to CSK.
While neglecting good under-the-radar players like Lungi Ngidi or Ajinkya Rahane. The result is that you have a squad with a few very expensive players while you leave gaps at other positions because you couldn't afford quality players in those spots. It's left them in a position now where they can't put out a balanced side. Some departments are inevitably left short-staffed, and for CSK, it's been their bowling. The hallmark of a great CSK team used to be what was the squeeze. They would let the opposition get to 80 for 1 after 10 overs, and then you'd think they were in trouble. But then the spinners would come on, the field would tighten, and suddenly the opposition would finish on 150 for 8. It was inevitable, it was surgical, and it was the Dhoni way. But that tactical magic requires specific tools. It requires a world-class spin duo and a death bowler who doesn't miss. Without Jadeja, without Ashwin, without Tahir, and without Dwayne Bravo, the squeeze has turned into a collapse. In the game against Rajasthan Royals, you could see it. Their fast bowlers were taken to the cleaners and their spinners were taken down in a way that wouldn't have happened 5 or 10 years ago with Dhoni at the helm. MS Dhoni has always been the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story with CSK. He's been the anchor. But the transition away from the Dhoni era has always been messy. The failed experiment with Jadeja's captaincy a few years ago left a scar. The lack of a clear young successor who embodies the Chennai spirit has now left the team looking leaderless on the field. So the question becomes, is this the end? It's a question that would have to be unthinkable 5 years ago. CSK used to be the gold standard, and they were the team that never missed the playoffs. They were the team that always found a way to win. But this sport is cruel. It doesn't care about your history. It doesn't care how many trophies lie in your cabinet. It only cares about the next ball. And right now, the Chennai Super Kings look like a team in free fall.
Goalie goes down the ground. Goalie goes out of the ground.
Tony finishes off in style.
I do not believe what I've just seen.